Hey, what is going on, everybody? I am here with my latest project, The Walking Dead. Today I'm working on finishing up the flat roof for this hospital scene, and I wanted to take you along step by step and show you how I achieve a realistic flat roof look. So follow along with me and I will show you some tips and techniques for achieving this look for your next build. For flat roofs, I like to use this scrapbook paper. It comes in 12-inch by 12-inch sheets, and I cut it down to about 3 inches and secure it to my platform. Now that my paper is secured to the wood deck, I'm going to go over all of these seams with some black paint and then a tar mixture just to kind of replicate what you would see on a real flat roof. For the tar, I'm going to mix tacky glue with some black paint and some silver metallic, and then I'm going to brush it into each one of these seams to replicate oozing tar. After that's done, we'll make some lead boots out of these butt connectors and these heat shrink tubes and a little bit of metallic paint. The first thing you want to do is get some flat black paint. I like to use my fingers to apply this because I can kind of rub it on there and give it more of a worn look. I find that a brush puts it on a little bit too heavy and it looks like you've brushed it on instead of like it's worn off over time. You don't want to go too heavy when you're doing this, just work it into the seams. You don't want it to look like you're applying paint, you want it to look like the metallic reflective surface of the roofing material has worn off over time. I like to start with some of the corners and kind of work it in that way. And then I go up and down each seam, but I try to do it in an ununiform way, just to sort of give it that effect of a natural aging and wearing process. Once your seams start coming together, don't be afraid to get a little bit out into the main portions of the flat roof because those would wear as well. You just don't want it to be very consistent. Just age it sporadically. Now for the fun part. We're going to use a little bit of this tacky glue, some black paint, and some metallic silver to make our roofing tar. The metallic silver is really important because if you just use the tacky glue and black paint, it's a little bit too dark to be the roofing tar. We want to use some of that metallic in there as well. There isn't an exact science to mixing these together. I just like to do it to where the glue actually turns black, and then I like to lighten it up with my chrome metallic to give it that metal look. Once I'm happy with the color and consistency of my tar, I'll take a small brush and start globbing it onto all of the seams and the corners. Don't really brush it because it'll flatten out. Basically just think of your paintbrush at this point as a little scoop and a ladle. You're just globbing it on there to replicate that oozing tar out of each of the seams. It's also important to point out at this point that the line that I'm making of this tar is a very fine line. I don't want to brush it on really thick and I don't want it to spread out too much. We want to keep scale in mind here, and remember that our oozing tar also has to be in scale with the rest of our project. So we don't want to make those globs too large. We want to make them the same scale that they would be on a regular flat roof. Don't forget to set a little bit of your tar aside for later. When we make those roof boots, we're going to go around the base of those with the tar. So set aside just a little bit so that you can use it for later on. So now our wearing pattern is complete and all of our tar is oozing out of the seams beautifully. It's time to make our roof boots. Grab a couple of appropriate size butt connectors, just like these. And then take your heat shrink tubing, a size that it'll easily slide inside. This one looks like it should work just fine. You can use any kind of heat source or flame source for this next part, like a Bic lighter or a candle lighter. I prefer to use this torch because it has a special attachment that's like a little heating element and the flame just heats it up. So there's actually no flame, it's just a glowing element. I feel like the heating element gives me a little bit more control over where the heat goes, and as an added bonus, I don't burn down my project. So I'll just place this heating element in here and screw this attachment back on. You can see the heating element has begun to heat up inside. So what you're going to want to do next is take your heat shrink tubing and your butt connector, slide the connector inside the heat shrink tubing. Really the only purpose of the butt connector is just to provide a little bit of stability and rigidity to these lead boots. If you don't have access to these butt connectors, you can use anything else inside, just be cautious of your scale. Just slide the connector inside the heat shrink tubing. You want it just to be flush with one end, and then hold it by the other end while you prepare your heating element to shrink the tubing. Once your connectors are inside the heat shrink tubing and the heat shrink tubing is wrapped all the way around, I like to snip off these ends. And then I'll take my paintbrush, reheat the tubing, and jam them down inside to fold them over the top lips. In the real world, these old boots would be made out of lead. So I like to take some of my chrome metallic paint and just kind of brush it on there. Leave a little bit of the black showing through, and then once the paint starts to tack up just a bit, I'll run over it with my fingers a couple of times just to remove brush strokes and make it look more like a rubbed, worn lead boot. Just in case anyone's unfamiliar with what we're making here, these are the lead boots that go over the plumbing vents on roofs. Once your lead boots are dry, pick a couple of random locations. I like to put maybe 2 boots together and then one on the other side by itself. I really don't feel like waiting for my hot glue gun to warm up just to attach 3 little boots. So since I still have my heating element handy, I'm going to just melt this glue stick and use that to hold these boots into place for now. Before your glue dries, just try to straighten them up a little bit. You want them to be completely vertical, and it doesn't matter if some of the hot glue is showing or if it's oozing out from underneath the boot. That's why we set that tar aside earlier, so that we can go ahead and put that around each of these boots to seal them. Now that our aging is finished and our tar is applied and our lead boots are applied, we're going to start working on some of the mold and mildew. So I've grabbed some lint from the dryer. I've got a little bit of tacky glue on this spatula, so we'll find a couple of locations. I don't want to oversaturate it with the mold and mildew and make it super grimy, but I do want to add it into a few select locations. So I'll start by applying just a couple of globs of tacky glue. I don't want to make this roof super grimy, I just want to add it into maybe 4 or 5 locations. So I'm going to start placing my glue for the layout. When you're happy with all of your glue locations, just take a little bit of your dryer lint and start separating it, loosening up those fibers, and then start packing it in tightly into your tacky glue. You don't have to smash it in there. It's alright if the lint is a little bit loose. It'll secure more to the deck after we paint it. Now that we've got all of our lint where we want it, I like to take my heating element here or a torch and just kind of go over it so that any kind of loose hairs or pet hairs or things that shouldn't be there just kind of singe away and burn off. The lint itself isn't going to burn very well, but it does singe any of those little hairs that might be sticking out that makes it look less like mildew and more like dryer lint. Give your lint and tacky glue a little bit of time to sort of dry up from the underside, and then start grabbing some greens and some browns and just a small touch of black, and we're going to start painting this mildew. I like to just put the colors on my palette and sort of mix them together by eye, but keep in mind as it dries it's going to darken. So put it on a little brighter than you might think you'd like it, as opposed to getting it too dark and muddied and then it's going to dry too dark. So use a little bit more green than you think you want, and then after it's all finished, if it's too bright, you can always kill it with a little bit of brown or black. Keep in mind that the tacky glue on the bottom was just applied to hold the lint in place, so you don't want to brush too hard on this step because you will wipe it away. Really, you're just trying to mat the fibers down a little bit so that it replicates more of that mold look. Just kind of mat it in there just a little bit, but don't brush away what you've put on. I also find it super helpful just to sort of dab the paint in there as opposed to brushing it. That way some of those fibers still stand on end. As a finishing touch, I'll take an olive green soft pastel and shave it over the mold just to give it a little bit of fuzz. Try to do this step while your paint is still wet, and that should be enough to hold it in place. Once the process is complete, I like to take it outside and just compare all of my colors in the natural light, make sure that I'm happy with everything, make any color adjustments as needed. In this case, I was happy with the way that all of the colors turned out, so I didn't make any adjustments. I hope you enjoyed this video and found these tips and tricks useful. Please like and subscribe. Find me on Facebook at The Fraser Project and Instagram at The Bearded Miniaturist. Thanks for checking it out. I'll catch you next time.